Learning Matters is an exclusive production of the Learning Channel, America's first educational cable network. For more information about Learning Matters or the Learning Channel, write The Learning Channel, 1525 Wilson Boulevard, Roslyn, Virginia, 22209.
This elementary school classroom in East Lansing, Michigan just might be the classroom of the future. It has computers with interactive programs that talk back to kids, a monitor, a VCR, a CD player, a camcorder, and everything is operated by 8-year-olds who produce and publish their own reports on video. But if you look beyond the technology, you discover that the essential ingredient is not machinery, but people. I'm John MERROW. Welcome to Learning Matters.
The production and broadcast of Learning Matters have been made possible by the Lilly Endowment, Incorporated of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Early morning in East Lansing, Michigan, the beginning of another school day at White Hills Elementary, a public school in a well-to-do part of town. From the outside, White Hills looks like a lot of elementary schools. Inside, it's different. A unique experiment supported by the state of Michigan and several high-tech companies has equipped 2 classrooms with computers, a camcorder, a VCR, a monitor, and a CD player. The computer ties all the technology together, allowing these 3rd graders to create and produce their own multimedia reports.
You can get a videotape, and then when you want to take a still picture of it on the computer, you can click on the mouse when you get there and click it on yes, and then it digitizes the picture for you and it goes on the computer and you can save it and put it on a report.
All right, these 2 boys have completed a project very similar to what you've seen children be doing. In fact, you and I did these, which is on a piece of paper with pictures, with writing, with charts, with drawing, with lettering. They're now going to take these 2 projects and turn them into a multimedia, which means they're going to take the 8mm camera and do taping of their drawings, of their pictures, and of their the total project.
They will just
yes.
They will make a videotape.
They'll make a videotape. They'll take the videotape then, and they will connect it into this computer.
Okay.
And it is loaded with storyboard program. They will digitize their images.
So that means they can pick the images they want.
Transfer them right onto the disc.
On the disc.
Onto the computer. And then it'll all be on the computer. Then they will go back and we will add sound.
Sounding narrative, music.
We're going to put some music background there with the compact disc, which also will feed into the computer, and the computer will also capture sound. They will then read over the sound, their text, the things that they wrote. They'll read it. And then all of that will then be connected with the VCR, and it'll be transferred to a videotape, which they can then take home and share with their family.
Jacqueline Killingsworth is the 3rd grade teacher in the classroom selected to experiment with multimedia. She's a veteran of 29 years in the classroom, so the steady stream of adult visitors doesn't faze her. Mrs. Killingsworth believes in cooperative learning, students working together in groups of 4 or 5 and learning from each other. She's found that multimedia demands that kind of cooperation.
No youngster is going to set out on this task and complete it by himself or herself. They may get their visuals ready, they may get their maps, their charts, text ready. They need at least 2 other people, just as technicians, to help them produce their report. And they're going to have to go on teams to get these things done.
It's teamwork.
It's teamwork or it won't work.
Mrs. Killingsworth believes that her students will learn as much, perhaps more, working cooperatively in multimedia as they would have in the old way.
They are writing everything that they have. When they produce something, part of it has to be in written form first. The same as TV journalists. Everything has to be written first before they do any videotaping or before they do any audio taping.
Mrs. Killingsworth said the 50 hours of training she received during the summer taught her several important lessons.
The thing that the training probably did is I learned how to learn, and I learned how to figure this out, and I learned that I needed other people. So these youngsters see that behavior modeled all the time.
One person Jacqueline Killingsworth turns to, as does everybody interested in multimedia, is Fred DiGnazio, the inspirational force behind the East Lansing project and the director of the state's Teacher Explorer Center.
I think of myself as kind of a Johnny Appleseed, and I am a Johnny Appleseed in part for new technology, but much more so I think I'm a Johnny Appleseed for kind of like revealing to people the creative potential that they have in themselves, and kind of a joy of authorship, pride of authorship, that they can create wonderful things in sound, images, words, language, and that I can use these new technologies to kind of light a spark within them where they see themselves in a new way, and they realize they have more ability to be authors, to create, to communicate, to do neat things. And so I'm kind of a spark person. I go around and I'm best working with beginners. Hey, good. Be around you. It's James, right? Okay. I feel that the primary problem in learning right now and teaching is motivation. You take a child who, like a fish, swims outside the classroom door through a sea of electronic media, and then you take that same fish and you enter the threshold of the classroom, you come into the classroom and shut the door, and all of that sea of media dries up, and instead you're in a room, pretty bare, not all that stimulating the higher we get in our grade level, and all you're doing is listening to spoken talk or text and then reading text. So it's like beaching a fish on a dry, arid shore. So teachers are not talking the right language to kids who are like fish swimming through a sea of electronic media. So that's why there's a problem, I think, with a lot of, how do you take curriculum that's just so dead and almost untranslatable and relate it to kids' electronic consciousness? And I think the way to do that then is to let teachers and children transform today's curriculum into this electronic format. Pronouns, prefixes, algebra, geometry, Romans, ancient Romans, all of these, Thomas Jefferson, can be rendered into an electronic version that is so exciting for these kids, and it's actually exciting for teachers to do too, with sounds. It brings these things that are dead to life, and it makes the children feel like authors. It makes the children feel like authors while they're doing it. And I think we can solve the motivation problem. If we can motivate our learners, if we can engage them, if we can bring their attention up where they are fully 100% involved in creating their knowledge and learning these subjects, then their test scores are going to come up.
Each of these soldiers have a different expression on their faces. The warriors were buried in the tomb of Shin, the Emperor Shin Hung Tai in 209 BC. This is a city. China has 1 billion people, and the city is usually in the east.
Now you've seen what we can do, and next you'll see what the 5th graders can do. My name's Amanda McGinnis, and I did the eastern section of Taiwan.
These 5th graders are showing their classmates their multimedia report on Taiwan. Just by pressing a button, they can go to any part of the report. This cooperatively produced project, A Trip to Another Land, is what Fred DiGnazio believes all students will be doing in what he calls the classroom of tomorrow.
In the classroom of tomorrow, unlike today, the teacher will not be the only conduit for new knowledge and new understanding. Where the teacher, if you think of all that there is to learn in the world, in the short time that children are children, how do you send that into the room where some kids learn better visually, some learn better listening, some learn better getting up and using their muscles and their hands and doing things. If the teacher's got to orchestrate everybody in lockstep, now everybody look at the green button, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The classroom, unlike our stereotype, is not an information-rich environment traditionally. It's an information-deprived, where all knowledge is squeezed through the teacher as the conduit, this tiny little trickle of text and talk, and then on out to the kids.
The old image of the teacher pouring the knowledge into the heads of the
one little stream of text and talk, not images, not sounds, not experiments, not doing, because that's too hard to manage.
So now we're tomorrow.
So in the world of tomorrow, the teacher is going to have to let go. And not to lose control, but to transfer it to people they respect, their students. Students working together in cooperative teams can take on the responsibility for their learning, much more so than they have in the past. And as cooperative teams, to do inquiry, guided by the teacher, multimedia publishing, where they are instant electronic authors, audio authors, video authors, multimedia authors with images and sounds and text. They can explore the curriculum in a whole new way and transform it and bring it to life. Computers in the future we see as little workstations, multimedia computers, that are electronically linked to other classrooms, other students, to information sources like satellite, cable TV, telephone modems, which can together be pipelines or electronic highways. And the classroom as a whole can move out into the world electronically, and through the electronic eyes and ears that this equipment gives them, can explore the subjects. But they don't have to all explore it right at the same time together. The tools should be powerful enough, and the teacher should have enough confidence in his or her children to then let the kids go out as essentially like little starship enterprises. This little team goes off to Jupiter for the morning. That team goes down under the Mediterranean to explore ancient Phoenician ships that have sunk under the Mediterranean. Another team shrinks down, like in Fantastic Voyage, and goes inside of the brain and studies neurons. As they're out there, they have these tools to capture images, sounds, keep journals, write their journals in, and when their spaceship returns, their little electronic spaceship, they share that the next day with their other classmates and say, well, this is what Jupiter's like, or we rode inside of a tornado, and this is what it was like. And it's not just experiential anymore. They can show graphs, they can show diagrams, they can have poems about the tornado, they can show images from Wizard of Oz. All these things can be cut and pasted into students' presentations.
Now you've seen what 5th graders can do. Would you like to know how teachers learn all this? That's next.
Teachers in Michigan get their training in multimedia here in the Teacher Explorer Center. It's actually just 2 small rooms in East Lansing High, but it's a techie's dream. $1.6 million worth of the finest equipment, nearly all of it loaned to the center by more than 30 companies, including IBM and Sony Showcase. In addition, the Teacher Center has a grant of $100,000 in state funds. Now in its 2nd year, the center has already trained thousands of teachers. On most days, including this one, roughly 20 teachers and administrators come to the center for a 6-hour workshop, led by SHARON GOTH-TEW, the administrative director, and Fred DiGnazio.
Let me explain. Linkway, like HyperCard, has certain avenues in it, like sub-programs, so you can go off into a word processor. You can go off into a paint program. You can go into essentially this type of screen, which is essentially point a button and click. It's like a control panel, and it does things for you, like go into a word processor, go into a paint program, or launch a laser disc segment. If you just say, oh, well, here's a computer, you're kind of scared of it, I know you have really low self-esteem, you feel you'll break it if you push the wrong button, but you're only going to hold it temporarily because, see, we wanted you to give this to your children and let them do stuff. Well, that's a very incorrect model. The teacher often is not, goes, oh no, if my kids have this, the classroom's out of control, they'll start doing things, it's a nuisance, it's a hassle, I have to learn all this stuff. And I found those are the computers that end up in the closets with the cobwebs, underutilized, or perhaps used for something not intimidating like drill and practice, some rote mathematics or arithmetic drill. So what we've got to do is respect the teacher's intelligence and respect their childlike creativity and potential, and we've got to turn them on. People train teachers robotically and mechanically. Press button A. Go over here and push this lever. See this screen. Do that. And they forget that the real way to hook teachers is passion and joy. Passion of learning and the joy of creating things yourself.
Children may be relaxed around technology, but teachers approach computers with an intensity bordering on fear. The anxiety is written on their faces. But according to Assistant Director SHARON GOTH-TEW, it's based on a misconception.
I think if we could take the word computer away, then bring them in here, and I think they'd feel more comfortable. Because a lot of people think before you do multimedia, you need to know how to do a computer, how to program a computer, and that's not it at all. You can come in here with no knowledge of computers and still be successful at multimedia.
What do you need when you walk in here to be successful?
Just an imagination.
Here's what I want to know. Suppose I send my kids to your school, my children learn to write, read and write and do those things. Are they just going to be television junkies?
No, this isn't television. This isn't television at all. We use the TV monitor, but it's not television at all.
Let me just show you. This is a tip that kids like. If it confuses you, we'll come back and help you. Kids like this because Super Mario Brothers, anybody know about Nintendo? No. They have all kinds of invisible buttons. Linkway's that way too, invisible buttons. Up here is an invisible menu. So if you're ever lost, you're inside of something called a folder. It's like a folder full of pages. If you have a blank screen, you're on a blank page in a folder. To get back to this page, which is kind of your important page, just remember it's page 1 in the folder. So you go up to this invisible menu, about here on the screen above the D, and click, and just say, I want to go to the first page, and I'll send you there. It's what I call a transformational environment. My other word is multimedia sandbox. I let them play in the sandbox for a day, and it's like a good movie. You may not be able to articulate every emotion you felt and how your point of view changed or something like that, but you feel it in your gut because you kind of lived it that day. And you can, because you saw it, how it was done, you've lived it, you can go out and do likewise. But the hardest problem is to have them not go back and say, wow, I'm a multimedia producer. I'm whiz bang. I can do all this great. I'm Steven Spielberg. Go back to the classroom and think of themselves as doing all this stuff like a performer on stage. And that's the old model. The teacher in the front of the room performing while the students just sit there and the teacher does all the work. In the future, we want the kids to do the work. And we feel with the right tools, the process for everybody's learning accelerates because you have all these learners working in high gear, and the teacher is the leader, as the master of how learning takes place and the areas that she wants, like the Starship Enterprise. They want to go to planet A, then planet B, and then off to the next galaxy. Teacher keeps them on track. It's the master navigator. But I feel the teacher has to first be able to do this themselves and feel the joy and excitement and continue. I feel that teachers tomorrow can join these teams, and the teacher can go to Jupiter. There will be time. The teacher doesn't have to be controlling the kids. You know you're doing it right when you can leave the room, and even for the afternoon, and the kids get done more with you outside of the room than when you're up front there, perhaps even inhibiting them, going, they'll stay after hours, or they'll want to come in evenings or Saturday. When do kids want to go to school on Saturday? But it happens.
Now I feel slighted, Cookie. Your hand's on his shoulder. Not...
Oh, okay.
Cookie! Come on.
What?
Keep your tongue in your mouth.
Your conviction that you need one computer, one workstation for every kid, is there an ideal ratio?
Yes, it's a myth that every kid needs a computer. In fact, it's like something out of 1984, our Brave New World, to put each kid plugged into, they become cyborgs, and you're focusing their primary attention, their primary reaction with machines. This kid's going to spend the day plugged into this electronic classroom where they're like a cog, like a plug going into a socket. You take the kid, plug them into this electronic classroom. They spend their whole day interacting with a machine. I'm not for that. I think that, and that's going to cost a lot. These electronic stations for a whole classroom cost $100,000. Then you need like a $20,000 technician just to be there to service it. So rather, I see a future much more where the teacher's at the center and where kids are encouraged to interact with each other. And the moment of learning takes place by human beings interacting with each other and helping each other learn. So in a situation like that, you don't need all those computers. I think something like 4 or 5 students working together in cooperative teams. So if you had a classroom of 20 kids, 5 students, 4 teams of students. So you had 25 kids, 5 teams, and 5 computers.
Suppose I want one of these. What would it cost to set up one of these stations with the computer as the hub and all the devices spinning out from it?
Well, the least amount of money is you might get by for $0.
Is this the famous scavenging?
Yes. What you're able to do, you know, you could call it shoestring multimedia or scavenged multimedia. What schools have are resources that they don't recognize. Lurking around in cobwebs and in dusty corners are old record players, tape recorders, even VCRs and TVs that go rolling around on these carts up and down the hallways. These can be put together along with a classroom computer and some software and a couple $10 cables from Radio Shack. And you can create your own multimedia inquiry center, a multimedia publishing center, multimedia learning center for your children. And teachers, I've been working for 5 years all over the United States and Canada. I've been in northern Saskatchewan and in places like Trussville, Alabama, and with teachers with no budget, and I give them a scavenging list, and I say, either you, your kids, your PTA, but just go around and find these things and come to this room, like the gymnasium, and just put the stuff on the floor, and we're going to all be multimedia plumbers. Put on our plumbing caps, and instead of plumbing water, we're going to plumb images, plumb sounds, language, spoken and written text, and we'll put these things together, and you guys are going to be multimedia authors. And then, now once you figure, gosh, I can do this as a teacher, you know your kids can do it too, and you can go back and teach your kids how to do it with equipment that you've pulled together from either in your school building or from some contributions from your kids or from your PTA or your home.
Scavenging is possible.
Scavenging is possible. What it lets you do is be on the cutting edge today, even in a very severely constrained budget situation.
Fred D'Ignazio believes in scavenging. Basically, that means working with whatever's available, because Apple computers, Macintosh computers, IBM PCs, and other computers can run the necessary software. D'Ignazio believes in cutting the best deal you can and doing the most with whatever you have.
Now, what if you couldn't have 4 or 5 computers? Where do you get started? I think one computer. If the teacher could think of that as the cockpit of the Starship Enterprise, I think it's an old metaphor for computers to think of them as data processing devices. That means they're stationary, data comes in, input, processing, output. I mean, we've been doing that metaphor for 50 years with computers. I say let's push that aside, because when computers do TV, computers link you electronically through sounds, images, and text all over the world and beyond the world. And so one computer is enough, because then whatever images you come up with on the computer screen, there are inexpensive means through LCD panels that go over on an overhead projector, through video projectors that are coming down in price, through ways you can just hook the average computer to the back of your VCR and use it with a large screen TV. And all of a sudden you can present your computer screen on a large screen TV. Any TV that rolls around in the cart in the school can be now a presentation screen, an electronic blackboard for teachers. So you can get by with just one computer, but you got to look at computers in a new way.
I can see a risk here that this wonderful multimedia approach to schooling will be unfairly distributed. It'll reach the kids of the affluent, White Hills Elementary School, but it won't get down to Detroit, it won't get down to poor kids, and the gap, already great, will just become greater.
Yes, and it's a real danger that, like everything, it percolates down from those who have, and they get it first, to those who have not. So I think that's a danger, but it needn't be that way. The idea of creating workstations from equipment that you have on hand, old record players, even older computers, an old Commodore 64. I mean, you wouldn't believe it could be the multimedia computer of the 21st century. You just need some imagination and start plugging this stuff together. Plug it into your TV set, plug it into your record player.
Take one last careful look, because you're looking at the future of schooling, or at what could be the future of schooling if we choose. Sure, there are unanswered questions about multimedia. Will it be distributed fairly to rich kids and poor kids alike? It should be. Does it produce results? What do we mean by results? Higher test scores? Kids and teachers who actually like being in school? Or capable, productive young people who know how to learn, know how to think, and know how to work together, like the kids you met on this program? For Learning Matters, I'm John Merrow. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.